Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 28 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. This is a community edition. We do corporate edition and community edition every other week. I've got Chris Feeney on the corporate side from IGEL. Chris, how's it going?
I'm feeling very corporate today, Andy. Thank you. Going well.
Well, let me clean that up a little bit because I do want to point something out about IGEL in general. You guys are of a new generation. I would say XenTegra is too, where corporate should never feel like corporate. That makes sense?
Right. Absolutely.
And I think the world of cloud and SaaS and services has really made it so where small guys can deliver and corporate has to retool the way they go to market because it kind of levels the playing field.
Yeah, I was actually working on a slide this morning, and I kept searching for new logos because I was basically building what IGEL can get you to, and I just kept getting blown away. It's not just one or two, it's like 4, 5, 6. I mean, it's so many options now. And, a company that wants to get started can leverage the power of this larger company that is offering up these options.
Right.
So it's a different world than it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago when a lot of that was on-prem, the only option you had, really.
Yeah. You can easily become a subscriber of what the big guys have had for years, and kind of all in it together. We're kind of pooling our abilities, and as cloud and services enable that type of approach. I get all the time, hey, congratulations, business so successful. That's debatable, but it's good.
It's
people talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like this thing of Fruit Loops I'm eating. It's so many colors, so many options, right? I mean, but they all, at the end of the day, they kind of taste the same, right? But they, you pick your color, you pick your logo, whatever, but they can be delivered by really kind of anybody today.
Yeah. Or the local grocery store can knock that off in a heartbeat because it's all coming from the same place, more or less anyway. The factory that makes those, there's one across the street that makes them just like that for the local grocery store chain, all the grocery store chains. You don't have to be a conglomerate to get it done. So what I was going to say is that's really tied into the success of IGEL and XenTegra, and that is the ability, the timing, and I'll just call it dumb luck in timing, that we just showed up in a world where marketing and other things using the scalability of the internet enables us to look and feel like something bigger than we are and overcome that barrier that would have been there in the past where, we couldn't have competed with a CDW. Now, because of the scalability of social media and conferences and things, we and you can compete with Dell and CDW.
Yeah, little guys taking on the big guys.
Then you throw in things like extra value add, like community. Seb's with us. Seb, how's it going?
It's going pretty fun. I must say it's the first time that we meet on a Friday, right?
I think
we should do that every time. It gives an extra boost of energy, I would say.
Yes, that's right. We got coffee and Fruit Loops for breakfast here.
Exactly. No, I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking, Andy. I was just asking you a question then, because you were speaking about all the new services. How big is the Citrix Cloud topic in the US? I mean, mixing a Citrix Cloud and an on-prem Citrix environment.
So, look, for the most part, these days, with the things they've solved along the way of taking their on-premises solution into the cloud, it's pretty relevant as long as it's approached for the right reasons. If it's approached just to make somebody money, it's a bad idea. If it's approached because customer has multiple data centers they need to finally get running and delivering Citrix workloads from, if the customer has a staff that needs as a service functionality and doesn't want to monkey around with maintaining and implementing new environments and keeping them up to date, it's a very, very relevant technology. In addition to that, there's lots of other technologies that are, I would say, I don't call them ankle biters anymore, probably knee biters that can do a lot of the same things, but not as feature rich. So it's kind of like all ships are rising and customers are getting the benefit of it. Once they get over the small little hurdle of losing control to some degree, and also the additional cost that goes along with as a service versus buying a subscription for the on-premises.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I'm seeing that in the community at the moment, that a lot of customers are moving to the Citrix Cloud. And I never had the feeling that it's a European or an American topic, but apparently it's a worldwide topic. So I was interested to see how it works in the US at the moment.
Well, what I do, and I did this week, it's important that we kind of identify early on that the Citrix cloud or whatever cloud you're talking about is just a marketing term, right? What you're really talking about is parts of the solution, in this case, the control plane and the access plane potentially as a service. And once you start having those conversations with people, even people that are anti start to understand, well, I could see where the value of that could be. I might not do it, but I can see where the value would be for a lot of people.
Perfect.
So guys, we talked before this that we wanted to talk about something that might seem trivial to a lot of people, but there's a lot that goes into it. And that is the ability to reset your IGEL operating system to factory defaults and then do what happens next after that and make sure you do it appropriately. I'll tell a quick story. I've got a Microsoft Surface in front of me that I use as my primary laptop. It's 4 years old. One of my other guys on the team has a Windows device that they reset every couple months just because they're engineers and that's what they do. The pain of doing that and losing all the stuff that you had locally and reconfiguring it yourself versus some type of systematic way, it's not for the faint of heart. I literally just had install, let's see, what was it yesterday? Oh, Ring Central, the Ring Central Meetings app. I was 5 minutes late for a meeting and then realized I had to put the app back on it. Little things like that cause you to have pain, but knowing that you can reset your device at a moment's notice and clean it all up and get it back to where it needs to be from a security and performance perspective is extremely powerful. IGEL makes that even easier than say Windows or Mac does. Seb, you want to talk us through kind of the concept there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from the general approach, when we come to Windows, I was a big fan of, I don't know if I can say that term, but of Acronis a long time ago, which is imaging software, which is maybe some European software, to be honest, I'm not sure. But I was absolutely a fan of that. And speaking about the IGEL operating system, you Barry don't need that feature because basically you cannot break something in the operating system such that the device could get irresponsive. I mean, there are a few use cases where it could happen when it comes to custom partition and scripting, but from the general approach, the device will stay operational. But if you want to go back to the factory default, there is a couple of reasons why you want to do that. First, we should never forget that beside all the UMS and ICG environment, we still have a local operating system where users might interfere too. And when I say might interfere, I'm speaking about display settings. I'm speaking about maybe local printers. I'm speaking about all the stuff that we all know from a Windows or Mac OS world are partially also available on IGEL OS. So you can do some misconfigurations there. But the most common term, and I hope that Chris will agree on that, is at the moment we have so much different private builds and firmware update that we're delivering to the market due to new Citrix workspace app versions, to new VDI plugins, which are available right now, that sometimes you have, let's say, some zombie process, some zombie files kept on the device who might break some configuration that you have done in newer profiles. So that's especially if it comes to the display switcher, so to the tool that we're using for the display configuration. If you want to use more than one display to have them mirrored or extended, move one device from the left to the left hand, etc., it might be a good idea to do a factory reset. Or on the other hand, we just spoke about the Citrix clutter at the beginning, and it's a good transition to that. From the community side, we had a couple of situations where the Firefox cache was absolutely full and needs to be deleted. And before doing that by hand and maybe take over some other failure that might come out of a broken Firefox profile, a factory reset would reset the device to a standard just after the initial installation, besides the licenses, but that's a topic we'll cover in a few seconds. So that's why I would do a factory reset. So just to be sure that all the local settings made by an end user can be resetted to a standard.
So I have a question for you on that. So
Sure.
The cache for Firefox, Mozilla browser gets full. How is that possible if IGEL is a read-only operating system? Kind of explain that real quick, and then we'll go back into the factory reset story.
Sure. So on the general So I can just repeat the question because I guess I didn't get the last sentence.
So you're saying that it's possible that you might do a factory reset or want to because of something like Mozilla cache getting full.
Yeah.
How is that possible in a read-only operating system? I know the answer to this already, but I want to quiz you. I want to talk about that in front of the audience here.
So that's my interpretation of IGEL OS is we are mostly read-only. We're mostly temporary. But some files need to be maintained on the local side. And one of them is, we already spoke that in another podcast, is the /WFS folder mount point on the local side where you have your license, where you have your certificate, where you have your local configuration cache. But you have also the /user home folder mount point, which is holding specific parts of some applications, and especially the Firefox ones. So as soon as, even if you just start the Citrix Cloud session, there was something downloaded during that process which blew up that local cache database. And that's the reason why we had that situation a couple of times, and we had to reset it to factory defaults. But we have still a couple of mount points locally where you can store some files, and they would stay over a reboot. And basically, with the Firefox cache is not deleted on every closing by default, but something that you can define. So that's one reason.
So that's great. So IGEL operating system is layers. Most of those are read-only, but there are some for the user's benefit that are not completely read-only because the user wants that cache stuff potentially, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, a quick question, just on that same topic, and then we'll go back to the other one. Is there a setting within IGEL profiles that can tell it not to cache anything, like always be in private mode, which, you answer the question when you can.
Yes, we can. So we could do easily the deletion of the Firefox profiles or also the Firefox cache on every close process. But you can also do the standard to reset, to remove every local file stored by the endpoint on a local side. That's something that we're delivering in a profile at the moment, which is not available everywhere, but it's definitely possible, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I've derailed you. Oh, I should say this. I've got on my screen here for the people who end up watching the video at some point. You have a video that's already out, I think, that talks about the IGEL reset process, and you walk through a demo of it. So as the name of it, if people are looking for it, it's from May 11th of this year, how to reset the IGEL OS to factory defaults. I guess we somewhat need to apologize for our very advanced listeners who know all this, but this is one of those things that a newer IGEL person needs to know. So we're covering it.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you're afraid of breaking the IGEL OS, you don't have to worry about it literally, because a reset just sort of is like, all right, let's go back and then get it connected back into your session and just resume whatever you had. But it's very hard to break in general in terms of that. But a reset will just, it's very simple to do, and there's several ways to do it. We'll obviously get into those options here, but
Chris, let's cover this real quick, because I was shocked the other day. I got people on my team didn't know this. A great way to test and evaluate the IGEL operating system is as a virtual machine inside of some type of client-side hypervisor where you can take snapshots before, after, during, and it runs extremely well if you set up like a Ubuntu version of Linux, and then you install IGEL into that virtual machine. Any quick comments on that you guys have found through your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I use that quite a bit for demos and stuff. And my buddy Ron there, I mean, he does it a lot with some of the testing that he does. He just fires up a virtual IGEL OS, gets the 90-day eval, license, does what he needs to do. Often it's involving some IGEL ready stuff that's going on, or maybe a custom partition work, and then blows it away, fires up a new one. I mean, it's very easy.
Yeah. All right, Seb, let's so your video, you walked through an introduction. I think we've covered that, but if there's anything that we didn't cover about the introduction piece and why you did the video, please feel free. And then next section is how to delete an IGEL operating OS device from the IGEL UMS, because you don't want to leave that object in there and potentially even tombstoned in there. Go ahead.
Exactly. So The standard process is you could just right-click the device and say delete. But in that case, I just have to mention that we still have a recycle bin in the IGEL UMS. And I must say thankfully, because on really early versions of the UMS, there wasn't a recycle bin. So everything you deleted just disappeared. And you had to roll back a backup. So I must say the recycle bin is definitely a huge enhancement in our UMS console that was introduced in UMS 5, I guess. So that's a cool thing. But just remember that as soon as you delete the device, it will not reset the device to factory defaults. So you have to empty the recycle bin to be sure to not get some kind of false positive feedback as soon as the device boots up and you think that the device were deleted. So that's just a thing I want to mention because that's a quite common error in the meantime.
I can tell you firsthand, I did that once before. I called one of your guys, Jeff Kalberg, and he said, well, did you get out of the recycle bin? I'm like, well, no. And boom, problem went away. I'm talking, I spent an hour beating my head against the wall because of that.
Oh, that should hurt, I guess.
Yeah.
So yes, that's just one little thing that we have to mention because you're not the only one. It's a really pretty common error. And I must admit, it happened to me too. Sometimes you're just deleting it, forgetting it. And next time during a demo, you're firing up your endpoint, you're wondering where all your settings are. Yeah. So that's quite common.
Hey guys, I want to highlight real quick. This is making the assumption that the machine has been joined to an IGEL UMS environment. Yeah. Every chance I get, I tell people, IGEL, the profiles are also local configurable as well for 99.9% of the things you need, especially these days with the ability to get a license from the trial license, at least from the internet. This is assuming that's part of that, but it doesn't have to be. Any chance I get a chance to tell people that, because it's extremely powerful when you're kicking the tires with IGEL to know you can do a lot of testing without even spinning up the UMS environment.
That's right. And that's the reason why we have a little bit later on in the tutorial the ability to reset the device locally to factory defaults with some limitations. That's something we will cover in a few seconds, but yes, definitely. So just in case that you want to set that device to factory defaults, you have also one other ability, which is doing more or less the same, but let's say directly without having the need to go through the recycle bin. I may just have maybe to mention something. You might already know that. I guess Chris and you, Andy, definitely, but our audience, not sure. The IGEL operating system is designed in a way that it doesn't have to speak to the IGEL UMS or to the IGEL ICG and then to the UMS every time during the boot up process. So even if you would have deleted the device on the UMS and your device has not a direct connection to the ICG or UMS, the device will still stay operational. And that's a big difference to what a zero client would deliver today. So what we are doing during a factory process, a factory reset process, is a quite complex achievement because we are deleting all the local caches, we are deleting all the local made settings, we are deleting all the UMS made settings. So it could be settings made by profiles, master profiles, template keys, etc. We are also deleting all the certificates stored that you might have deployed to your endpoint. So the certificate authorities for Citrix Workspace App Client, for Firefox, etc. We are deleting all the SCP and DES stuff, so all for the network security, etc., etc. But we are also removing the, I would say, the marriage between the endpoint and the UMS or ICG. So we are deleting a specific, or let's say we're deleting specific files in the file system, which are resetting the device into factory defaults. But I have to mention it because it's also a quite common error. We are not deleting license files during a factory reset. So don't expect that a device that you send out, that you reset to factory defaults, will just ask for a starter license again, or will start a license deployment request again. That's not the case. We might cover that in upcoming podcasts, if you would agree, Andy, but that's just a thing that we have to mention. Start a license and license are not deleted during the factory reset process. All the rest, yes.
Hey, Seb, if you wanted to take away the license, is there a switch for that?
No.
No?
Make it simple. Not really, not at the moment. Okay. We are working on it. And in my opinion, we should have done that from the beginning on, but we're definitely taking it on the list for the features for upcoming versions. We have profiles that we can deliver and that are available on kb.azure.com? Yes, but you cannot say right-click on the device, remove all licenses. That's something which is not available at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay, no worries. Chris,
So,
you've been strangely silent. Any comments?
Just thinking through a couple things, right? So when you, I think you touched on this briefly, but if you are doing it from the UMS, the device doesn't even go into the recycle bin; it's just completely gone. Versus if you, the first item on this article, if you just delete the device, not a factory reset from UMS, it does go in the recycle bin for obviously if you want to restore it if that was a mistake or something. But with the factory reset, it clears out. You don't have to worry about flushing out the recycle bin and everything else that Seb just said. It just clears all that stuff out and removes it from any kind of management. And when it comes up, you can now bring it back in or go somewhere else into some other environment you want to get managed with.
Yeah. So let me try to layman's, just repeat that one more time. If you delete it, it goes in the recycle bin. If you do a factory reset from the UMS, it resets it and expects it to, it eliminates it from, does it eliminate it or does it just put it in a stage where it's expecting it to come back? Which one?
No, it's really removing the device completely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So on the, just on the use cases we spoke about at the beginning, I forgot to mention one typical use case. Let's imagine that you are on a customer side and the customer is already having a UMS, maybe a UMS 5 or an early UMS 6 version, and you have to reinstall a new UMS server because of migration to OS 11, because of UMS high availability cluster installation, whatever reason. But you want to do it cleanly and you don't want to move some certificates from the old environment to the new server. Sometimes you are not knowing that a UMS server is somewhere over there. Sometimes it's a Windows PC running in some desk situations or on a virtual machine, totally forgotten. And you're wondering why, as soon as you reset the device to factory defaults, the command is not hitting the endpoint. Or on the other hand, you made the topic we will cover in a few seconds, the local reset to factory defaults, and you're wondering why you cannot take over that device because it's registered to something else. There is a specific error in the registration process. That specific case is something that I mentioned in the Tech Tip Tuesday video. We have the ability to check locally, but also from the UMS side, assuming you have access to the relevant one, to which UMS server the device went registered. And you cannot imagine how many times it happened when I was in the pre-sales engineer role that I went through the reset to factory defaults process and I was just not able to take over that devices that just resetted a couple of seconds before. For that use case, you can just firing up that discussion locally in the Azure setup or through the UMS. If you open the local configuration and go to System, Remote Management, you have an overview about the Universal Management Suite. And there you have the UMS server just showing up. And that IPv6, IPv4 address that you are seeing there is the UMS server which the endpoint is talking to. And if that one is differing from the UMS that you just installed, then you are sure to 100% that there is somewhere at that IP address another UMS server. Mm-hmm. And that can be misleading in some specific cases and can cause a lot of trouble because all your devices will get registered through the DHCP or DNS option and the automatic registration process to that all UMS server.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? If you're in a migration scenario, I mean, a new device coming up is going to try to resolve IGEL RM server. Either, you can make that happen with the DNS host name, a record essentially, DHCP tag. But if you have two of those and you forgot to clear up one and it's pointing out, now your device is maybe getting confused to go into the wrong server. So just something to be aware of for sure. I don't think I've run into that quite yet, but I've definitely run into something where they had two UMS servers and they were migrating one from devices from one to the next. And that also involved licensing changes and stuff like that. But yeah, there's also a command line you can run on the device. I'm trying to remember, I was looking for it. Yeah, that's right.
Get remote manager dot UMS server null, I guess. But let me check.
Yeah, I was trying to find. There's a great sort of tip cheat sheet, or I guess on IGEL commands or Linux commands in general. IGEL commands in there too. That's on the community, maintained by one of the members. So if you're not aware of that, certainly go out. It's great to have those little things if you get into the CLI and want to just browse around or navigate and see what those commands do for you.
So the command, just in case, is get system. So get blank system dot remote manager in one word dot server null dot IP. I guess I have it in another Tech Tip Tuesday video when it comes to the local registration to IGEL UMS, but that's a good point. Definitely cover that one.
Because at some point we need to do a conversation around pros and cons of having a multi-UMS server environment versus a flat environment and scalability. We may have talked about that before, but we'll probably dive into that one of these days. Not an easy topic.
Nope.
But
there are definitely different recommendations when you speak to different engineers.
Yeah. Well, and both they're doable in your world. It's just a matter of how, what's your, like you said a while ago, if they can't phone home, they still work. It's just like Microsoft, right? The stuff's cached locally, the profile is. So it's very forgivable, forgiving, not forgivable, forgiving.
Agreed.
All right, so we're on to the next one, which is how to remove the UMS server certificate. Is that from the client or from the UMS?
No, that's really from the endpoint. So assuming that you do not have an access to the old UMS server, you can't remember the login details for the IDP connection or whatever, you still have the need to knowing the local root, so /administrator password. But assuming that you have that, you can access the local IGEL terminal by pressing Ctrl-Alt-F12, assuming you didn't disable the console switcher, or you go through accessories terminal plus, and there log in as root. And then you have our mount point, which is called WFS, which is our local configuration cache. And in that folder, we have a certificate file. That certificate file is called server.crt and is, let's say, the one-on-one marriage between your endpoint and your UMS. So as soon as you delete that file, you would be able to register that device with another UMS server by scanning it or by rebooting it. And assuming you have a DHCP or a DNS alias set, the device will be redirected to the new server. That's the main purpose of the file, but it has also a second role. It will be used together with the key store to encrypt the communication of sending out comments, sending out log informations, and also getting files transferred. So as soon as you delete that file, your device, I would not say is not secured, definitely not, but could be taken over by any kind of UMS server on your network. So that just in case, be careful with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if for those that are familiar with the UMS console and you get the little radar icon and you go to search for devices on the network, let's say you get a hit on 5 devices. On the left-hand column, there's usually I believe it's a certificate, and it's like a yes or no. If it says yes, it's already under management, and this is why another UMS server, if you were to stand it up and you wanted to start taking over devices, it couldn't be done if it's already under management. It just won't happen. If it says no, as Seb was referring to, that means it's free game. I can import it. It's not under management by another server, so you can't just sort of hijack these devices in that regard. But once that certificate's cleared out, whether it's done locally or factory reset, whatever it is, now you can bring it under management from another server.
Yeah. That could be extremely frustrating if you didn't didn't think to go do that.
In
Yeah,
that case,
and it does happen when the factory reset has. So generally speaking, that is a step that you would, if you're at that point, something else didn't work or whatever was going on, but or you're just, I don't want to do a complete reset. I just want to clear out the server and switch it to another one or something and retain all the local configuration settings or whatever. I've never tried that to see how it goes. By the way, I need to see it, play around with that.
I mean, the standard use case or the best practice I would recommend when it comes to removing a certificate and moving a device from one UMS server, let's say the old one, to a newer one, and you have access to the old UMS server, is not to going through the command line, definitely not, because on, let's say, 20, 100, 1,000 of devices, it can be a little bit complicated to do that every time through SSH or through a script. So the other approach is to remove the certificate coming from the old UMS server. We have, if you go to the context menu, the ability to remove the certificate from the endpoint. There is, I guess it was a right-click of their endpoint command and then a remove certificate.
Yep.
And if you do not reboot that device in that moment and just stay it like it is, you can then move it by scanning or by pressing the radar button that Chris just mentioned and take it over into the new UMS. So that's one approach that you can send on one device, on 10, on 1,000 devices. Be careful with that, definitely, but that would be my recommendation beside going to the command line.
So I know we kind of talked around this a little bit, but do we want to jump into how to do it from the command line and how you do it, how you discuss that in the video now?
Yeah, sure. So on the command and on the endpoint itself, there's two commands I would recommend. If you just want to remove the endpoint to one UMS to another, and you just have the local access, then it's called rm, which is the Linux command for removing something from the file system, rm/wfs, like I said, the local configuration cache mount point, and then /server.crt. And as soon as you hit that command as a root user, you can take over the device from another UMS side. So that's a command I use.
We've talked a lot about root user, and I don't think we've done a podcast on this yet, but making sure that's one of the first things that the organization does is set a password for the root user, right? You're exposing how powerful it could be if we left it default. Somebody could wreak havoc pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I don't see that a lot, obviously, when people are testing, but if you're going to put this in production, your base configuration profile has to have a local root password assigned.
So my son's come home the last week talking about this kid, John something. I won't repeat his second name. And he goes in the computer lab when nobody's looking, and he resets a lot of the settings or changes a lot of the settings, so the computers just basically go haywire when the kids start using them. It's just kind of cool, kind of scary to see a 12-year-old thinking about ways he can destroy the computer lab. And it's funny because I tell my son when I was 17, I did the same thing in the high school computer lab.
Yeah, I had a flashback there to what was that movie with Matthew Broderick, War Games?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Movie, by the way.
And then probably the most common way people do this in testing scenarios and one-off scenarios, doing it from the boot menu. Seb, you want to cover that one?
I just want to go back just for a second, because we just covered the removing of the certificate. And Chris just mentioned in the chat, the comment was just coming just right after that. If you want to reset to factory defaults on the command line, there is a predefined binary which is available, which is called reset_to_defaults, which needs to be executed in the root context and need to be confirmed by 2 times entering yes, if I remember right, 1 to forget the local settings, and 1 to be sure that you want to reset the device to factory defaults, and then the device will reboot, or you should reboot the device after the command, and then the device is on factory defaults from the local side. Mm-hmm. Just in that case, and it will be the same on the IGEL boot menu in a second, just be aware that if you didn't delete the device on the IGEL UMS side, the device will stay there. So resetting a device to the factory default from the command line doesn't remove it from any kind of folder from your UMS side. So just be aware of that. And if you would like to be sure that your device didn't get some kind of weird configuration from your profiles, I would then, if available, also delete it from the UMS side. But if you just want to delete all the local configurations, then go the reset_to defaults. Or if your device boots up, and that's the last point of the Tech Tip Tuesday video, if your device boots up, press the escape button on your keyboard. Just hit the button as soon as the device is powering up, because sometimes it's extremely fast, and then you are entering the boot menu of the IGEL operating system. In that menu, you have a specific entry which is called, I must admit I have to double check, but it was reset to factory defaults.
That's right.
Yes, just reset to factory defaults. And then you have to confirm again that you're administrator there. So you have to enter your administrator password that you set in your profile, just in case, because that's one use case I'm seeing also when I'm sending out UD Pockets to customers, or when I was sending out UD Pockets to customers or demo devices. Sometimes the device was not resetted to factory defaults before the device was sent back to me. And if the customer set a local administrator password by his own and didn't communicate it to me, the device is basically useless, because the device is secured. So you cannot remove that password, even if I'm coming in and saying, I have a master password. That's not possible. The only way to get the device back to normal is to get, how was it called? It was not a token, how was it called? A recovery key, if I remember right, that you have to ask at the service. So be aware that the local administrator password will also block the IGEL OS boot menu when it comes to the IGEL factory reset.
Yeah.
So you will be asked.
I was just thinking something as you were talking there, kind of going back to, where we started sort of from the UMS on down to the local device. But if you're at the UMS and maybe there's something on that device that you want to keep, you can export the device settings as like a profile, and maybe it was getting wonky and you're not quite sure what was going on. So if you do that, then you delete the device. If you're troubleshooting and you can't quite figure it out, it's, resetting to defaults is honestly a nice friend, because you just, all right, let's start from scratch again, and then layer in profiles, settings, or whatever as you are working through it. Maybe you can identify, but if you are able to export the settings before you delete it, reset it from the UMS or whatever, then you can at least compare those profiles, see, right, what was assigned to it, and maybe find out what the smoking gun is in some cases. So, but
yeah, absolutely.
So guys, what did we leave out? What didn't you cover now that you've done the video and talked through it, Seb, that still might be lingering to bite somebody who's in this scenario?
On the factory reset process, I can just maybe give a little bit of outscope about what is coming in, hopefully in near future. We have at the moment just the ability to reset the device to factory defaults or delete it, but that goes basically in the same direction. There was a lot of requests coming from when I was a pre-sales engineer, from customers in my region, but also now from the community. It would be great to have the ability to just remove specific parts of the configuration through the UMS. So let's remove all the local made configurations by a right-click mode. So everything that the end user made, some, let's say, configuration he made in the local IGEL setup, he made in the display switcher, he made in his Wi-Fi manager. Right-click, remove local settings is something we might expect in the near future. Okay. Same step for resetting the device to factory defaults, but not removing it from the UMS, because that's also a use case which is quite common. You have a lot of profiles assigned to the endpoint, but sometimes the device is not in your area, or you have maybe an ICG connection and you cannot re-enroll the device after the reset to factory defaults without having someone on the endpoint hitting some ICG connection strings for the password or for the token itself. We might expect also the feature to just remove all the configurations made locally and made via profiles and UMS, but keep the device in the UMS registered.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see many use cases for that. I also like the idea of just nuking it and knowing that you're starting from scratch. But, people want options, and that would certainly be, in a lot of cases, all they're trying to accomplish anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, guys, thanks. We're right at time. It's good. I know this is valuable. I know this will be valuable for my own team, especially as we have guys that are transitioning from being pure play Citrix administrators or engineers or consultants into the IGEL world. I know for some people they're like, oh, I know all this already. But all of us didn't know this at one point, and sharing this proactively through Seb's video and this conversation is just extremely valuable.
Absolutely.
Happy to read that.
Yeah. I'll keep the questions coming. If you have them, reach out on community or elsewhere. Happy to always help.
Seb, I have one more question for you.
Sure.
How's your creation of your LinkedIn profile coming?
Can I maybe do some frozen moving?
Oh, we lost him. We lost him.
Yeah, I guess.
You got to play it off. You got to be like the actor, the guy who plays.
That was pretty good.
You got to learn not to breathe. You got to have your eyes. You can't. There you go. All right. Well, Chris, good talking to you. I think Seb died.
All right.
We'll do it again next week. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.